Hey there, fellow board gamers, I'm Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and you've tuned in to the next episode of the Weekly Ratchet. In this episode, I'll be sharing some recent playthroughs of some fairly heavy board games, and then I'm going to have to hand it to all of you, as you've certainly given this baby his bottle. Cheers to the Weekly Ratchet. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back here to the Treehouse in Ashland, Virginia. I hope you've all had a fantastic week of gaming in the past week, and I hope you don't mind if I decide to go with a little bit of ambient lighting here in the room. This is that time of the year when the weather is fantastic. You can leave the doors and windows open, your electric bill plummets, and I know that this too shall pass. So I've decided to embrace it a little bit for the day here. I've got a window open in front of me, window open here next to me, and I'm just enjoying the season. So, I'm going to get to the episode here today, and this one's going to be a little different, just a little different in format, because I didn't get any new games this week. Nothing here to talk about as far as new acquisitions or new additions to the collection. So let's jump straight into crowdfunding. All right, folks, I want to do things just a little different here with the crowdfunding portion of the Weekly Ratchet. The idea here was never to just tell you the games that I'm backing. That's not really very interesting. I wanted to keep it more general of games that are on Kickstarter or GameFound. So I'm going to try something. Well, it's different for me, but this is what a lot of other channels do. They just kind of run through some of the popular games that are out on the crowdfunding platform. So I've got Board Game Geek here pulled up, and I'm going to just kind of run through a couple of the games on the crowdfunding countdown. First up is Thunder Road Vendetta. This is the first reprint campaign for the game, also a new expansion called Carnival of Chaos, and that defines this game very well. I've played this game twice. I don't ever need to play this game again. It is, for me, I have called it, sort of meanly, if I'm honest, Candyland on wheels, right? You're rolling dice, you get to go a certain number of spaces on the track, very old school in that design, and then you're immediately just bumping into each other. It is extremely random in what happens. There is a ton of dice chucking. You run into instances where you kind of forget whose turn it is because you've been rolling dice for the past 5 minutes. I hate this game. I really, really, really hate this game. And it really surprises me how popular it is amongst heavy gamers, right? They've got Lacerda collections and all kinds of stuff, and yet then they'll pay hundreds of dollars for an all-in pledge of this just completely random, chaotic, crazy game. And I don't have a problem with random chaos, but this is too much for me. I think it's too long of a game for me as well, for just how little agency you have. But it's raising almost $1.6 million. What the hell do I know? Let's move on. The next game is Flow. I have heard a lot about this game. The art and components look fantastic. I can just tell you off the get-go, it's not something that I'm going to have a lot of interest in or be able to get played very often. And I don't really know a whole lot about it here. It's a heroic journey across the iceberg sea. Lots of neat components. Does it tell us too much about how to play it? It's got discovery elements, not a lot of complexity, a lot of synergy, a lot of replay value. How do they rate replay value? It's always kind of interesting. Let's see, you got sandbox, you've got modular, competitive, solo modes, co-op modes. It doesn't have take that. It's not point salad. I don't see a whole lot about how do you actually play this. Here's how you can spend all your money. Here's a lot of reviews. Oh, here's overview and gameplay. An adventurous strategy game that will take you on a heroic journey across the iceberg sea. Choose your path. Venturing out to blah, 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 blah. Introductory thematic games. It's not story-driven. It's a sandbox nature. I like sandbox games. That could be good. You know what? Let's jump back to Board Game Geek, and let's see if this tells us a little bit about what this game does. It's got action points, area movement, contracts. That could be nice. Critical hits and failures. Hidden victory points. Isn't that kind of point salad? I don't know. You've got Mancala. Now that's kind of interesting. A Mancala element modular boards. Those are always pretty good. And variable player powers. I don't know. Sounds interesting. Not something, like I said, I'm probably not going to get to play something like this very often. And this is by Pika Games. Yoma is involved in this. Yoma is one of the guys who at least saved the Sweet Mess game from This was Big Kid Games who ruined that. So I am a fan of Yoma. I'm sure that this will probably do very well. It'll probably be a pretty good game. I know that it is funding quite well. So that is Flow. Up next, I saw this one. This is Final Cut, a horror movie card game. Now, I'm not a big horror gamer by any means, but this is a neat idea. I like the idea of trying to make, sort of a story, try to create a movie through cards. Now, I've had a handful of games where you're just creating a story. Maybe there's not necessarily a win-lose condition. There's no points. You're just sort of building a story out of cards or those Rory Story cubes. They've never really clicked with me. I like to have a much more structured gameplay, trying to get points, trying to, quote unquote, win a game, if you will. But this is still a neat idea. This is funding pretty well, so hopefully this will be a good game for folks. Up next is Upshot, the disc golf game. I talked about this a few episodes ago. I don't think this one's going to fund. They're down to just a few days left. I don't know. They're about $2,500 left to go. I'm only in this one for $1, but I do love seeing a good disc golf game. This is a dexterity game, and I think that the challenge is going to be, again, that you can only flick in a straight line, generally speaking. Someone in one of my videos mentioned using like the ice cool pieces that you can kind of do some trick shots with, and I think that's a neat idea, except for then your discs are going to kind of look like bowling pins or penguins or something like that. So I don't know how you'd make it look thematic, but I think it's not a bad idea. The other problem with that game, though, is that it hurts like hell to flick those little penguins. They are a hard plastic, and they hurt if you're really trying to do a crazy jump shot or a trick shot. Anyways, that is Upshot, the disc golf game. Up next is Biome. Listen, there are a ton of these nature-themed games, and anymore now, I look at these through a long-distance lens because I already have a handful of these. I have Earth, I have Forest of Pangaea, which I love Forest of Pangaea. You should check out my review for that over on the Dice Tower channel if you're so inclined. And what was the other one I was just thinking of? There's Cascadia. Life of the Amazonia, which is in my bag because I've recently played it. Anyways, Biome looks really pretty. All these games really look very pretty, but they also kind of look a lot samey because look how many environments are there that you can make a board game about. How much green can you put into a game? So for these, I usually wait until I have a chance to play them, and then of course I have to pay out the wazoo to buy a secondhand copy. But this looks really good. Of course, we've also learned that games that look really good don't necessarily make good games. Anyways, moving on. The next one is Chroma Arcana. This is a tactical card game of dueling mages. Now, I have talked a good bit here in the channel, in the Weekly Ratchet, about the Wormwood game, which is also a dueling style card game. And as I've mentioned, I'm not generally a big fan of these. The mages theme kind of turns me off personally. Of course, with these, it just always comes down to kind of the synergy, how well they can work. That says it plays like a TCG without the need for boosters. I love that in card games. So, if it's one of those where I don't have to keep going out and buying boosters, trying to find the right cards, I'm definitely on board for that. 150 deck combinations. That's pretty neat. Looks very customizable. If this is a theme, I also like these. I like these cards because you don't have walls of text on these things. It looks like, you get to really enjoy the art of the card. And I think that's a big deal these days. I did see, though, here, one of the other pictures did show a bunch of cards. There's a little bit more text on those. Still not too bad. But I thought, oh, no. Okay, that was a different one I was looking at. So, yeah, this one looks okay. Looks pretty neat. Up next is Beyond the Horizon. This box cover alone, I think, looks pretty neat. Or at least this cover image, although I literally just noticed it says a roll and write game. Roll and write game for me means a game I won't play. Yeah, God, roll and writes. We just need to stop making these things. That's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but I'm just so tired of a game where all you're doing is just checking boxes and writing down numbers. It's old news. I'm going to move on. Next is Meeple Inc. Now, I have seen a ton of advertisements for this game. Everyone keeps talking about it has the best components. It's got little game boxes and little miniature Kallax shelves and looks like medal awards. So much care and love detail put in this game about games. Has great table presence. and I keep seeing the ads that talk about it has the best components, has wooden easels and metal trophies and acrylic standees. Good components do not make a good board game. I have had a couple of these lately. I think the first one was Steam Up. It was the dim sum game. Looked fantastic with little steamer baskets and these little rubber food pieces. It looked adorable, and that game was terrible. It was so random. You had so little agency. You only had a couple actions on each turn. You couldn't get anything done. Hated that one. The next one was Globetrotting. I can't remember the name of the publishing company, but they also made Canvas. I could not wait to get Globetrotting, and it was so fiddly and obnoxious with this little plastic globe in this stand. You had to try and write it with a dry erase marker. It was so messy and clunky. Good components don't make a good game, and so I'm hesitant just with the focus on the components for this game that the game itself is going to suffer as a consequence. Now, I could be wrong, and that's totally fine. I think I love these little boxes. It even looks like there's little components that go into boxes. I think I saw a picture of that somewhere that showed, here's all the money you can spend. Where did I see that? There was something I saw about putting the little components into the boxes, but I can't find that now. As you see, there you go. You're putting like little boards in the box. There's one that showed like a little sand timer kind of a thing. I don't know. Looks neat. I'm gonna have to try and probably just avoid this one, I think, just because really right now I can't go back in more games. Anyways, hopefully I'll get a chance to try it, and hopefully I'll be wrong. Hopefully it'll be an absolutely fantastic game. I love the idea about, you are making games. I think it says it's set like in the 70s or 80s or something like that. It's kind of set, back in time a little bit when game components themselves. Yeah, right here. Welcome to an alternate 1970s in which meeples live harmoniously alongside humanity. And you're developing board game projects. Worker placement. I do like worker placement games. A unique theme. That's definitely true. Exclusive components. Yada, yada, yada. Anyways, looks neat. Up next is Inventors, another Shem Phillips game from Garfield Games. Look, I've kind of abandoned the Garfield games. I realize that each one of them is slightly different. The fact that they all look the same has gotten to be very annoying. I played the first Raiders game. I thought it was kind of neat, okay, neat idea, worker placement, getting a lot of resources and then just placing workers to swap out resources. It got very samey after a while. And then I played Champions of Midgard, which is a very different game, but still uses some similar ideas, right? You're placing workers, you're getting resources. But then you've got this whole going out and fighting monsters element, which to me was far more interesting than Raiders itself. And then I've played, I know I played Architects, I know I played Paladins, and I played at least one other in there, and it just got very samey. They all look the same. You just keep saying this, just keep seeing the same cards with the same people. They're just recycling their art, and that's boring. So I've abandoned these games. I don't really care about them anymore. I know this one will do well. It's probably making $300,000 out of a $14,000 goal. Screw you and a $14,000 goal. There's no way you would have done it for $14,000. Up next is Flashpoint Legacy of Flame. I wish I could weigh in on this. I have Flashpoint sitting over here next to me. I have never played it. I got it from a math trade. I kind of like cooperative games, but this does look like one where, again, it's just going to be the game just constantly throwing bad crap at you, and you got to try and constantly adjust to new bad crap. And those are okay, but it's kind of a common formula, right? They just kind of keep doing the same thing. But I need to try it. I need to break it out and give it a play. The expansion is doing pretty well here, I think. Yeah, $172,000 out of a $20,000 goal. Yeah, right, $20,000. Up next is Robot Quest Arena Bot Battle. I've talked about this one quite a bit. This one did launch, and I did back it. Some of this $385,000 is mine. What I was really excited about with this one, you can kind of see the base board right here, which is, what is that? 1, 2, 3. It's a 7x7 board. And what I kept waiting to find out was were they actually going to give us a bigger play area? And you gotta scroll down here a ways to find it. But they do show you somewhere here. Nope, that's still the original board. That's still the original board. So again, there's your 7x7. But if you come down here, I think the new one is 9 by... You're still scrolling to try and see the new board. I'm scrolling. This makes for compelling television, folks. There it is. There is your your big board, and it actually looks like it's a two-piece board now, so you can kind of move the market around a little bit, maybe to your play space, as I imagine this arena itself is quite large. But there you can see the larger play area. Yeah, it looks like a 9x9 if I can do the math real quick. And I think they did a poll, and they were asking for, what other maybe stretch goals folks would like to see. And one of the options was a 2-player variant. And I wouldn't mind seeing a 2-player variant to this, as my daughter really loves playing it. Then maybe her and I could sneak in a quick game. Of course, at that point, it's going to be one of those battling games where you're just constantly duking it out with the same person, which isn't always as much fun. Actually, it's almost never as much fun, but still, if it would make the game a little better at 2, that's not a bad idea. Anyways, that is Robot Quest Arena Bot Battle. I cannot wait for that one. Last one here is Cascadia Rolling. This one caught my attention. I do like Cascadia, although I haven't played it recently, and I haven't played it very much, but I like the idea of it. I do think that the new Life of the Amazonia game, which looks and plays like Cascadia, but with a whole bag building element to it and a lot more to it. I like Life of the Amazonia better than Cascadia, but I'm always on the lookout for, stuff for Cascadia. However, when I realize that this is another flippin' right game, I mean, just look at those boring player boards. Nothing about that says excitement to me. Just a row of check boxes. That's a hard pass immediately from me. All right, so that is a quick recap of some crowdfunding games. Let me know your thoughts on this format. Of course, you may disagree with a lot of the stuff I said. That's perfectly fine. We can all have our differences of opinions. But, let me know what you thought about this. Let me know if there's some projects that you're interested in. Maybe I can dig a little deeper into those for the next video. Let's move on. All right, moving into the question of the week. First up, I will apologize to all of you. I complained last week because I only got one comment to my question of your favorite board gaming component. And last week, y'all shut me up for sure with a slew of comments on my newest question of the week, which was, how might you recommend encouraging folks at a local gaming convention to break out of their cliques, to break out of their circles, and get to play with some new people? Got a lot of interesting comments. I'm going to try and get through all of them here. I will also say I apologize if I miss you in this one. It was not on purpose, but let me go ahead and jump through it. First was from Joseph Clayton Ace, a first-time commenter who said that premium snacks would always be a good idea, but also suggesting having a holy grail or hard-to-find game sitting on the table, kind of a board game or trap, right? A lure to bring people in. And I do this. I will certainly have a game out sometimes that is either like the new hotness, something that's really popular, or maybe something that is obscure. Folks haven't seen it. Like last week when I was, or 2 weeks ago when I was at the event, I had the Wormwood game sitting out because it's got a really neat looking cover, and I thought maybe it would get some people over to just kind of take a look at it. With the snacks thing, I don't think that works too well with like 100+ people. That's an awful lot of cost to try and have snacks out for something like that. Plus, like, you got to deal with, snacks while playing games and all that kind of mess, and it's just easier to avoid it. But thanks for the comment there, Joseph. My buddy Chris Munton said that he likes to go around and introduce himself to folks and try to find common interests. Doesn't always work. Yeah, I totally agree, Chris. And the thing is, and I've noticed this with you, like you're very sociable. You'll chat with people as they come walking in, as they come walking by at things like RiverCon or even other gaming events. I don't always have that courage. I do realize that I am a bit more introverted than most. Heck, maybe that's why I feel like I'm not linking up with folks so much at these events. Maybe I'm just not trying hard enough, and that's tricky. I'm not the pushy salesman type. Maybe I need to be, but I tried to do that. I did mention last week that I went up to a couple who were kind of walking around the flea market and just said, hey, come play a game. I had chatted with them a little earlier in the night, so I felt a little comfortable with at least, we kind of had a face-to-face recognition, if you will. But yeah, it's tough, but definitely not a bad approach. Greg of the Meeple Society said that the players' wanted flags that they use at the Dice Tower Retreat work really well. And you are right, they do. And we had players' wanted flags at RiverCon because someone who was in attendance has also gone to the Dice Tower Retreat and had suggested that in the past. And that guy's probably a hero. Anyways, Greg went on to say that flags can make a complete stranger become a close friend. And wait, that's how we met you, so I rescind my comment. Are you proud of yourself for that one? Are you? Anyway, CR Poll suggested hovering at a table and asking questions about how the game plays. Now, I've certainly seen this. Even at RiverCon the other week, we would be sitting there playing something or maybe trying to teach something, and folks would come up, hey, what's this about? How do you play this? Sometimes they would just kind of sit and listen in on the teach, and that's certainly fine. Sometimes they may watch a turn or two play. That's also fine. You do have to make sure that you're not distracting people who are trying to take their turns, or if there is a teach going on, don't interrupt. Don't kind of get in the way. The last thing you want to be doing is interrupting a teach of other people trying to learn the game, because then they will just quite dislike you. Along that line, Simulation Chris said that he has no idea how to make friends, but that he's tried lurking on a table and watching what was going on until he started getting dirty looks. Definitely don't do that. Yeah, exactly. You want to make sure that you're not being a nuisance. It's certainly okay to, hey, this looks really neat. What's this called? Maybe can I join you later and play it? Or do you have an open seat? Can I join you real quick if you're still in the teach? We did have someone come up and was interested in joining us when we played Autobahn, but we'd already been about 30, 45 minutes into the teach. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but we were a good bit into the teach. And even we were kind of like, gosh, we would love to have you. Really, really would, but we would lose way too much time. We'd have to start all over again. And he understood and moved on. But certainly been there and done that. And it's not a bad idea. It's just something you got to approach very carefully. All right, Mark from Australia said that it's tough to meet people in a small rural area of southern Australia, but suggested a randomized team approach where folks might draw cards and then form a group based on matching colors of those cards. And on that same line, Carltoonist also suggested a teams-based approach where people would be randomly assigned teams to play with. And he also suggested assigning secret identities to folks and awarding a prize to the person who met or found the most secret identities. Now, the teams thing is certainly an idea, right? We see that in a lot of corporate team building events where you draw straws. Okay, whoever has the same team name and the same team color, okay, you're going to go over here and you're all going to work on these different projects, sort of simultaneously. And I don't think that's a bad idea, and I think that would work for like a smaller group. If you had, let's say multiples of 4 up to, let's say 12 or 16 people, right? Where you can kind of say, okay, we're all going to play the same game and draw these cards or these, whatever, and decide which copy of the game you're going to play and who you're going to go play with. And I think that would work in those environments. I think that if you're doing, 100-something people, and again, you're all showing up at different times, you all have different interests in what you're going to play, that may not work as well. However, the secret identity thing is sort of the lines along what I was thinking when I posed this question. And my thought was a simpler approach to it at first. What if you had sort of like a roster, like everyone would show up and they'd get sort of just like a list of just lines. And with every game that they played, you would get a signature from everyone that you played with, or maybe just a name or something. And then at the end of the event, or towards the end of the event, people could turn in their cards, and whoever had the most names would get entered into a raffle. If you had a tie for the most number, you would then maybe go into a raffle, and that person would get selected to win, a free game or something that maybe either got donated or was purchased with funds that were used to, register for the event. I think the secret identity thing is kind of neat. That gives an added twist to it. Like, well, I met the murderer, right? Or I met the thief, or I met the judge, whatever. And I think that could add a little bit more of a fun element to it, in that, who are you? Oh, well, I'm the brassman. I don't know, whatever. And so I think you're onto something there with that, and that's kind of the direction that I was going in. Also, my buddy Tony, who I met at Gen Con last year, and also, I think a first-time poster of the show, thanks for joining in, Tony, suggested a lottery system where players would get entered to win a prize for meeting more folks. And again, exactly the line that I was thinking of. And so I'm going to, sort of try and figure out a way to hone that idea and suggest it to the organizers of RiverCon. Again, of course, it could just be me, right? Maybe I'm just not as good at getting out and networking as I like to think that I am. Maybe I just need to work on my own approach to meeting new folks. That could be it completely. Okay, that's it for the question of the week. For next week, I'm actually going to take a question from Chad Waller. He posed this, I think, back in episode 5 when I was talking about it was episode 4 when I was talking about my top 10s, right? And he asked me about my favorite top 10 heavy games, but I missed the other half of his question, which is, what is my sweet spot for game complexity? And I think that's an intricate question. There's a lot of nuance to it, right? So what is your sweet spot for a game's complexity? What is it about a hard game that you like? What makes a game too hard for you, maybe? There's a lot of different ways to approach this question, but that is the question for the week. Thank you to Chad for posing it earlier and letting me steal it today. All right, let's move on. Okay, let's wrap up the Ratchet with some games I've played in the past week. First one is one you've seen a couple times already. This is Wormwood by Ixion Gameworks. Now, I've talked about this a couple times. I promise I'm not going to go into this one in too much detail, but I got to play this with the design team, Damon Stay and Cassandra Chowdhury. We played on Tabletop Simulator. This was actually something that I had kind of posed to them because I said, hey, look, I am really enjoying this game, but a lot of my friends, it's not really their kind of game, especially my wife. She did not enjoy playing this at all. And they said, well, hey, let's play online. Damon won. No surprise there, but I had a really great time. And I got to chat with them afterwards for a good half hour, just kind of sat there, just, shooting shit a bit. And that's what I love, right? That's why I'm doing this show, is I love just getting to sit, talk about games, pick them apart, comparing to other games, talk about what I like and what I don't like. Maybe, especially when you're talking to the designers, you can say, well, why did you do this? What were you thinking with this? What was your inspiration? And that kind of stuff is so exciting. What I've realized, and I've talked about it a couple times already, is that I don't really like these confrontational take-that games. And that is 100% this. Confrontational, take-that, stealing stuff, 100%. But what I realized, I finally kind of came to the understanding that what I really like about this game is that engine building element, the fact that you can play these really interesting cards and build these unique combos, and this thing triggers with that thing, and then that lets this do something different, and I really, really enjoy that in these games. And the fact that it doesn't really play that long, it's mean, but everyone's being mean, right? So the meanness is kind of amplified. They didn't really pick on me that much early in this game. Cassandra had a really good turn later and just wiped me out pretty well. But Damon won the game, and I don't know if he won because maybe we were going after each other too much. We weren't really picking on him, although I was picking on him, to be fair. But he had a really neat combo. He played a really clever card at the end and just kind of locked it in for himself. And I really, really like it. I really, really enjoy it. I hope this one does well. Wormwood. Whoops. Up next, I played Voidfall last week, and a quick shout out to Dave Orse of the Board Game Revolution Facebook page, who was going to join me here for a game of Voidfall. Came a little ill that day, wasn't able to come and join us, but we played it anyways. This is by Terzi and Nigel Buckle. I'm not lugging this game off the shelf again to put it here on the table and get that echo off the back of that massive box, but I think it was the 5th time I've played this thing. It was not my best playthrough. We had one new player with us, and I just got bombarded by questions the whole game. I couldn't really focus on my own strategy. I actually lost 2 sectors in this game for the first time ever. Actually lost some territory to the Voidborn and had to claw my way back twice, and it just really set me back in the game. We only get about 14 actions. We played the cards that came up, kind of made this game a little shorter than what I've played in the past, and it was just really difficult. I do still like it. It's still way too complex. It took 80 minutes to set up a 3-player game. That's absurdity, just ridiculous. But Voidfall. Up next, we played, over the weekend, Let's Go to Japan. I talked about this game. I picked this up for my daughter. I was a little nervous with the teach of it because in this game, you are drafting these cards. You've got a Tokyo deck and a Kyoto deck. You're drafting these cards. You're playing them onto a tableau. And the components, of course, I have the all-in Kickstarter. The components are just fantastic. You're playing these cards out, but the cards don't do anything initially. You're just getting them played out into the days of the week. Monday through Saturday, there is a Sunday expansion, which came with the game. And they don't do anything until you're actually taking your trip. So you're planning that trip, and it's not until you get 3 events in the day, like a morning, afternoon, evening, if you want to think about it that way, that then some things trigger. But again, you're still just setting up for that that actual trip. Then at the end of the game, you're all supposed to take your trip to Japan basically simultaneously, and each card will show some really beautiful art about certain locations. It'll tell you the place that you're going to, and then of course there's a lot of symbols, and those things are what makes the game, right? So they're moving up these various tracks. You're getting a lot of point multipliers. The bottom card for every day has I can't remember what it's called, but it is a special opportunity or a unique goal or something like that. There's a name for it. And if you have all that stuff in place at the moment that you would get to that card, you can grab some extra points. And I was worried about how that sort of interesting synergy might jive with my daughter, who's 11. She loved this game. We were sitting there, we were playing it. We hadn't even gotten to the actual, I don't think we'd gotten to the actual trip. And she goes, I want to play this again as soon as we're done, which we didn't, because it was just getting a little late that day. But she really had a blast with it. She actually beat me too. Now the game is pretty random. Again, you're just drafting these cards. You only get to draft 18 cards. You only get to play 18 cards. And so your options get a little limited. There is some mitigation, which was certainly nice. And I think I didn't even embrace as much of that mitigation as I could have. I came in last, which was certainly fine. I had a great time. Now, the one thing I would say with this game is that simultaneous trip taking at the end isn't very fun if you do it simultaneously, because you're not going to be reading your stuff out. You're not going to be talking about your trip to Japan. So the way that we played it was that my daughter took her trip, told her story of that trip, then my wife, then myself. Yes, it made the game longer. And even towards the end, I was kind of just quickly jumping out. I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing this. But it was still really, really fun. And it made it feel a bit more real. Like you were actually, hey, on my trip, I did this and I did that and I saw these places. I went to a board game store, which was fantastic. I loved it. One other slight downtick for me was that we actually found a lot of duplicate cards in those decks. So I think my wife and my daughter both went to the same, it was like a train station. And also at one point, my daughter did draw 2 completely identical cards. And we actually let her discard one and redraw, because you can't draft when your options are the exact same. Like that doesn't work, I don't think. So that was a little bit of a downtick. Anyways, beautiful components, very fun game. Daughter loved it. That's always important. Let's go to Japan. Up next, okay, so over the weekend I got invited to a little game day from one of the organizers of RiverCon, which was a huge honor, I thought, to get to go and hang out with some folks. And I played with a bunch of people I hadn't played with before, except for one. I knew him fairly well. They invited me down. They said, we're going to play some games. I said, what's on the docket? They said, Great Western Trail and Brass Birmingham. And I said, I think my plumber's calling, and I'm going to have to sit this one out. I do not like those games. They said, well, hey, we just really want to play with you, so why don't you come down and hang out? We'll pick some different games. I said, okay, fine. Well, the one guy made a pretty strong pitch for Great Western Trail New Zealand. Now, I've played 2nd edition. I've played Argentina. This is I'm not going to say last, right? Because they just keep coming out with more of these games. I've kind of said that they're like the Fast and Furious movies, and eventually at some point we're just going to have Great Western Trail Family. But anyways, I hated Argentina. I mean, Argentina just literally pissed me off as a board game. And the guy said, oh, no, I know, I get it. This one's way better. It's much more positive. All the things are more benefits than hindrances. And he really made a pitch. And I said, okay, fine. I'll be nice. I'll play a Fister game. And he wasn't really wrong. It was a much better experience. It still has a lot of that just nonsensical Fister non-thematic bullshit. You're selling sheep, but they just go in your discard pile and you get to sell them again. There was this bird track, which gave you some really nice bonuses. It was a nice track to manage, but why was it a bird track? I have no idea. There were some other components of it, there were elements of it that just did not make any sense. And the thing that really held me back was that instead of just selling to this kind of like train track, you actually sail around. There's the top half of the board has boats, you have a boat, and you're sailing to different islands, and if you put a little house on the island, then you are able to sell to that island, which gives you additional objectives to work towards, which was kind of neat, but I never really got to move my boat that much. And of course, this is one of those games where you're building up different aspects. You can improve your ability to shear, you can improve your ability to sell, you can improve your ability to move the boat, you can improve your ability to buy sheep. There's no cows in this one, by the way. And the boat thing just didn't really work out for me. And the one player that we played with was one of those folks who just, man, he just gets the game. He's played it a bunch of times, and he had almost twice my score, which is a little bit depressing, if I can be honest. The biggest problem with the game, though, was that it lasted 4.5 hours. That player, being a very intelligent player, don't get me wrong, but he was really AP, and he really sunk into every one of his turns, and he's just moving all this stuff around. I get this, I get that, I go here, I do this, I trigger that. And then he goes, well, I'm not really sure if I'm actually winning. I told him there's more, his player color was blue. I said there's more blue on this table than a smashed Smurf. And so, yeah, he clobbered us. And it was a little, we knew after 2 hours that he was going to win the game, but we had to sit there for another 2.5 hours to confirm our suspicions. So that was Great Western Trail, New Zealand. I would play this again. I will say it. I would play this again at 2 maybe, and maybe without someone who is that smart. Anyways, that was Great Western Trail. The last game that we played that night was one of my favorite games, Life of the Amazonia. This is by Bad Comet Games. As I mentioned this a little earlier, this was my number 1 game of 2023. I did a review, sort of a list over on the Dice Tower a few months back, and I love this game. Beautiful looking art and components. It uses a lot of screen printed animeeples. It looks great. This is a pattern building game, just like Cascadia, where each animal scores differently, but it's also a bag building game, kind of like Altiplano, in that you actually have a discard pile, which means it really is pretty much a deck builder, but that's okay because I love deck builders. And there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of succeed at this game, as that player showed us again, because he clobbered me again in this game with a score I've never seen before, but I did come in second, at least in this one. Love this game. Really, really great game. I probably need to do a review of it here on the channel, Life of the Amazonia. And that is it. I didn't get to play as much stuff this week, but I'm actually glad I got through all of those games even as it is. What have you been playing? What are you checking out on crowdfunding? Don't forget the question of the week. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Weekly Ratchet. I'll catch you next week, folks. I'm so close. So close. I was doing so great. See you later. Cheers.